I used to think my life was limited by my circumstances, by what people said about me, and by the mistakes I'd made in the past. I thought my ceiling was already set, that I had to settle for what life handed me. But then I realized the real prison wasn't outside. It was inside my mind. I had built walls with my own thoughts, believing things like, I'm not good enough, I'm too late, or I'll never change. And the more I repeated them, the more they felt like truth. But here's the thing, they weren't truth at all. They were lies I had agreed to. Letting go of limiting beliefs didn't happen overnight. It felt like pulling weeds that had been growing for years. Deep roots tangled in every part of me. Some of those beliefs had been planted by other people's voices, some by my own fear. I carried them everywhere, even into new opportunities. And when things didn't work out, I would say, "See, I told you I couldn't do it." I didn't realize I was the one making those prophecies come true. The breakthrough came when I started questioning those thoughts instead of just accepting them. Every time I caught myself thinking, "You can't," I asked, "Who said that? Where is the proof?" Most of the time, there was no proof, just a memory of failure or someone's opinion I had let sink too deep. I learned that beliefs are not permanent. They're choices. And if I could choose to believe the worst about myself, I could also choose to believe the best. It wasn't about fake positivity or pretending I had no problems. It was about replacing lies with truth. The truth that I am capable of learning. The truth that the past does not define me. The truth that every setback is a setup for growth. The more I fed my mind with empowering thoughts, the weaker the old ones became. It was like turning off a radio that had been playing static for years and finally hearing a clear signal. But here's what no one tells you. Letting go of limiting beliefs means letting go of the identity you built around them. For so long, my "I can't" and "I'm not enough" had become part of who I thought I was. Without them, I felt lost at first, like I didn't know myself anymore. But that's exactly where the transformation began. I started defining myself not by my fears, but by my potential. I began to see challenges as invitations instead of threats. When I stepped into a new belief system, my actions changed. I took risks I would have avoided before. I spoke up in rooms where I once stayed silent. I tried things without needing to be perfect, and every time I acted in faith instead of fear, my confidence grew. That's the beautiful thing about letting go. You make space for something better to take root. I also learned that people around you might not understand your shift. Some will still try to remind you of the old you. They'll say, "You've changed," as if it's a bad thing. And you know what? They're right. You have changed. You're not living according to the old script anymore. The opinions that once shaped you no longer hold the same weight. And the moment you stop needing their approval is the moment you become unstoppable. Letting go of limiting beliefs is not just about personal growth. It's about freedom. Freedom from the voices that said you can't. Freedom from the fear of failing. Freedom from the shame of your past. It's about stepping into a version of yourself you've only glimpsed in your imagination. And when you finally meet that version in real life, you realize they were inside you all along, just waiting for you to believe in them. The day I decided to let go, I wasn't instantly fearless. I still had doubts. But I chose to act anyway, to keep walking even with the noise in my head. And with every step, the noise got quieter and my vision got clearer. That's the secret. You don't wait until you feel ready to believe in yourself. You start walking, and the belief grows along the way. If there's one thing I know now, it's this. You are not stuck because life has limited you. You are stuck because your mind has. And the moment you decide to release those limits, the whole world feels wider. The opportunities you thought were closed off begin to appear. You realize you're not too late. You're not too broken, and you're not too small. You're just in the middle of becoming. And the person you're becoming is far more powerful than the person you used to be. I didn't just let go of limiting beliefs. I buried them, and in their place, I planted seeds of truth, faith, and possibility. Now, every day I water those seeds, and every day I watch the real me rise. There came a point in my life when I realized I couldn't stay the same and still become who I was meant to be. I had been holding on to comfort like it was my safety net, afraid to step into anything unfamiliar. But the truth is, transformation never happens in the safe zones. It happens when you allow the old version of yourself to fade and make room for something new to grow, even if that growth feels uncomfortable at first. For a long time, I thought change would just happen to me. I thought time alone would make me wiser, stronger, better. But time doesn't change you. Choices do. And my choices were keeping me in the same patterns, with the same mindset, living the same story over and over again. I wanted a new chapter, but I kept reading the old one. Transformation started the moment I stopped waiting for change and decided to create it. At first, it felt like losing myself. When you start letting go of old habits, toxic environments, or ways of thinking that you've carried for years, it feels like you're tearing out pieces of your identity. But that's because transformation is not about adding more. It's about shedding what no longer belongs to you. I had to release my excuses, my fears, and my need for control. It wasn't easy, but the weight I was carrying wasn't easy either. I used to think transformation meant becoming a completely different person overnight. But I learned it's more like peeling layers off an onion. Each layer you remove reveals more of your authentic self. You don't become someone new. You uncover the person you were always meant to be. That process requires honesty, being willing to admit where you've been wrong, where you've been holding yourself back, and where you've been afraid to grow. The hardest part was the in-between. That stage where you've let go of the old, but the new hasn't fully taken shape yet. It's where your faith is tested because you can't see the outcome. You just have to keep going, trusting that the process is working even when it feels messy. I had to remind myself that a caterpillar doesn't come out of the cocoon halfway. It has to endure the full transformation before it can fly. During that time, I surrounded myself that force that encouraged growth. I read, I listened, I learned. I stepped into rooms that made me feel small, not so I could shrink, but so I could stretch. I started choosing actions that aligned with the person I wanted to become, even when they felt unnatural at first. Over time, those actions became habits, and those habits began shaping my new reality. I also had to face the truth that not everyone would understand or support my transformation. Some people preferred the old me because it was familiar to them. Some even resisted my change because it forced them to confront their own stagnation. But transformation isn't about making everyone comfortable. It's about living in alignment with your purpose. I learned to bless people, love them, but not let them dictate my growth. The most powerful shift came when I stopped fearing who I was becoming. At first, the new version of me felt foreign, more confident, more disciplined, more focused. I almost doubted if I could sustain it. But transformation is not a temporary boost. It's the result of consistent choices that, over time, rewrite who you are at the core. And when you fully step into that new identity, it stops feeling like an act. It becomes natural. Looking back, I realized transformation wasn't just about improving my life. It was about elevating my vision, the way I think, the way I see myself, the way I respond to challenges. It all shifted. I no longer live on autopilot. I no longer settle for what's convenient. I'm intentional now, and with that intention comes clarity. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that transformation is both an ending and a beginning. It's the death of what you've outgrown and the birth of what you've been waiting to become. It requires courage, patience, and a deep trust that the process is worth it. And it is worth it, because when you embrace transformation, You stop living in the shadow of your potential and start walking in the fullness of it. I'm no longer afraid of change. I've seen what happens when you let it in. It shapes you, refines you, and reveals a version of yourself that you didn't even know existed. And once you meet that version, there's no going back. You realize you've been carrying wings all along. You just needed the courage to unfold them and rise. For years, I carried my past like a shadow that never left me. No matter how far I walked, it followed, reminding me of every mistake, every loss, every hurt. I thought I had moved on, but the truth was, I was still living in the memories. I replayed conversations that couldn't be undone, regretted choices I couldn't change, and held on to Cain, as if keeping it close would somehow make sense of it all. But it didn't. I only kept my Saturn in a place I no longer belonged. Dying to the past wasn't just about forgetting what happened. It was about breaking my attachment to it. I had to stop identifying with the old version of myself who made those choices, lived those seasons, and endured those wounds. I kept saying I wanted a fresh start, but I was dragging old baggage into every new beginning. And baggage is heavy. It slows you down and keeps you from running freely into what's next. The truth is, I was afraid to let go. My past, as painful as it was, felt familiar. It gave me a sense of identity, even if it was a broken one. Who would I be without the old stories, the "hey, I've been through this" narrative I carried everywhere? I realized I was clinging to the past because I didn't fully trust the future. It's strange how we sometimes choose the comfort of known pain over the uncertainty of possible joy. The turning point came when I understood it. Holding on to the past were already chains inside me. The lessons I needed were already the past to less to it. The lessons I needed were already inside. I didn't need to keep reliving the experiences to prove they happened. The scars were enough, and scars don't define you. They remind you of what you've overcome. That realization gave me permission to finally loosen my grit. Letting go felt like a kind of death. I had to bury my what ifs and if onlys. I had to say goodbye to relationships that once meant everything, to plans that didn't work out, to the version of me that didn't know any better. And yes, there were moments I wanted to dig it all back up. Moments when nostalgia or regret came knocking, convincing me to revisit the pain. But I had to remind myself, you can't heal if you keep reopening the wound. One of the hardest parts was forgiving myself. I had forgiven others long before I even thought about offering that grace to me. I had to accept that I did the best I couldn't keep punishing myself for not knowing myself, no meant what I know now. Once I truly embraced that, the weight started lifting. And here's what I learned. When you die to the past, you make room for life in the present. You stop seeing the world through the filter of what happened back then and start experiencing it as it is now. Conversations become lighter, dreams feel possible again, and you begin to notice the beauty of where you are instead of mourning where you've been. I also realized didn't have to have access to my present, Not everyone who walked with me in an old season deserved a place in my new one. I stopped feeling guilty about creating boundaries. It wasn't about shutting people out. It was about protecting the person I was becoming. Dying to the past doesn't mean erasing it. It means you stop letting it have the final say in your life. My past will always be a part of my story, but it's no longer the main character. The chapters ahead are unwritten, and I get to decide what they'll hold. Now, when I look back, I don't see chains. I see lessons. I don't see failure. I see growth. I don't see an ending. I see preparation. And when the weight of old memories tries to creep in, I remind myself, that version of me is gone. I'm not that person anymore. I've buried the old season with gratitude for what it taught me, and I'm walking forward, lighter, freer, and stronger. Because the truth is, the past had its turn. Now it's my turn. There came a point when I realized I wasn't put on this earth just to survive, pay bills, and call it a life. Deep down, I could feel it. There was more for me. A pull, a whisper, something inside saying, "This isn't all you were made for." At first, I ignored it. I told myself it was just wishful thinking, that people like me didn't get to live big, meaningful lives. But the more I tried to silence it, the louder it became. It wasn't ambition, it was a calling. And I knew if I didn't answer it, I'd always feel incomplete. Stepping into your higher calling isn't a one-day decision. It's a journey. For me, it began with an uncomfortable truth. My comfort zone was killing my purpose. I had been living small, choosing safety over significance. I had been saying one day for so long that I almost forgot today could be that day. My higher calling didn't come with a neon sign. It came as small nudges, moments of conviction, opportunities that scared me more than they excited me. The first step was obedience, even when I didn't feel ready. I kept thinking, when I'm more confident, when I have more money, when I have more time. But I learned that your calling rarely waits for your perfect circumstances. It calls you in the middle of your mess. And if you wait until everything feels secure, you'll never move. So I started where I was, with what I had, trusting that more would come along the way. It wasn't easy. Stepping into something greater meant leaving some things behind. People, habits, even parts of myself. Not everyone understood. Some people thought I was being unrealistic or chasing something impossible. But a higher calling isn't for everyone to understand. It's for you to obey. I realized I couldn't build the life I was meant for if I kept living to please people who weren't assigned to my destiny. I also had to face fear head on. Fear told me I wasn't qualified. Fear reminded me of every mistake I'd made. But my calling wasn't about perfection, it was about purpose. I started to see that what I thought disqualified me actually prepared me. The pain I'd been through gave me empathy. The failures taught me resilience. The detours taught me patience. Everything I had lived through was shaping me for what I was stepping into. One of the biggest shifts happened when I stopped asking, "What do I want?" and started asking, "What am I here to give?" A higher calling isn't just about fulfilling your dreams. It's about impacting others. It's about becoming a solution to a problem who's been silent in the dark. A voice for someone who's been silent too long. And when you live for something bigger than yourself, even the hard days feel worth it. There were moments I wanted to quit, moments I questioned if I'd heard God right, moments I thought maybe I'd made it all up. But every time I felt like turning back, something would happen. A door would open, a word would confirm, a person would be helped by something I said or did. And in those moments, I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Now I understand that stepping into your higher calling doesn't mean you have it all figured out. It means you trust the one who called you enough to take the next step without seeing the whole path. It means you walk in faith, not because you know how it will end, but because you know who's leading you. And here's the beautiful thing. When you start walking in your calling, you feel alive in a way nothing else can make you feel. You wake up with purpose. You push through challenges because you know they're shaping you for something greater. You stop measuring your life by how comfortable it is and start measuring it by how much you're growing, giving, and becoming. I don't want to leave this earth with my potential still inside me. I don't want to meet the person I could have been and realize fear kept me from becoming them. That's why I've decided, no more holding back. My calling isn't a someday dream, it's a today decision. I've stepped out, and yes, it's scary, but it's also the most freeing thing I've ever done. Because when you walk in your higher calling, you're not just living, you're fulfilling the reason you were created. And nothing compares to that.